President Trump attempted to put his executive agenda back on track by unveiling his plan for immigration reform.
Yeah, the president has claimed that it would be good for the economy, but critics say it's bad for the country.
KCAL 9 political reporter Dave Bryan joins us now to sort this one out. Dave?
Yeah, and the plan has already sparked a heated national debate. One thing both sides agree on is this new immigration plan would have a major impact on who gets into the country and who doesn't, legally that is. The plan would chop the total number of legal immigrants pretty much in half and would favor well-heeled, professional and successful English-speaking immigrants over those with lower skills.
It's great to be here today to unveil legislation that would represent the most significant reform to our immigration system in a half a century.
With his legislative agenda stalled and his job approval numbers slumping to an all-time low, President Trump is doubling down again on his hardcore supporters. The president, flanked by Republican Senators Tom Cotton and David Perdue, unveiled a plan designed to cut legal immigration to the U.S. by 50%. It aims to remake the immigration system by moving away from an emphasis on family migration, creating instead a merit-based system that grades immigration applicants on their readiness to work in the U.S., requiring that they can speak English and fill a vacuum in American employment areas where there's a shortage of workers, as well as they have to have the means so they will not be going on welfare. Trump says this proposal will protect American workers by reducing immigration permits for low-skill individuals.
Among those hit the hardest in recent years have been immigrants and, very importantly, minority workers competing for jobs against brand new arrivals. And it has not been fair to our people, to our citizens, to our workers.
But White House senior advisor Stephen Miller, an alumnus of Santa Monica High School, clashed at a White House briefing in a bitter exchange with CNN White House correspondent Jim Acosta, who raised the question of whether the new immigration standards requiring that immigrants can speak English is consistent with the proclamation on the Statue of Liberty about America's warm reception for immigrants from around the world.
Statue of Liberty says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free." Doesn't say anything about speaking English or being able to be a computer programmer. Can't people learn how to speak English when they get here?
Right now, it's a requirement that to be naturalized, you had to speak English. So the notion that speaking English wouldn't be a part of our immigration systems would be actually very ahistorical. Secondly, I don't want to get off into a whole thing about history here, but the Statue of Liberty is a symbol of liberty enlightening the world. It's a symbol of American liberty lighting the world. The poem that you're referring to was added later.
That sounds like some national park revisionism. This whole notion of, well, they could learn, they have to learn English before they get to the United States. Are we just going to bring in people from Great Britain and Australia?
This is an amazing moment. That you think only people from Great Britain or Australia would speak English is so insulting to millions of hardworking immigrants. Jim, that is one of the most outrageous, insulting, ignorant, and foolish things you've ever said. The notion that you think that this is a racist bill is so wrong and so insulting.
Few Capitol Hill analysts believe the bill has much chance of passing. California Senator Dianne Feinstein says it would be a disaster for this state's agricultural economy, which would lose tens of thousands of desperately needed agricultural workers to harvest the crops.
They are among the class that this would be prohibited. It would cripple agriculture if they didn't have the people coming in to do this work. And what we have found is Americans will not do this kind of stoop labor in 100 degrees temperature.
Now, it may not be a coincidence that this new immigration plan, which the president says would protect working-class jobs for Americans, was unveiled on the same day President Trump's poll numbers sank again. The Quinnipiac poll shows only about a third of all Americans think the president is doing a good job. More than half said they were embarrassed that Donald Trump is president. So that's something, that certainly he's trying to address poll numbers with showing that they're moving legislatively.
Right. Well, let's switch gears here just a little bit to Chief of Staff General Kelly. He's only been in office, if you will, or in that position for just a few days, but has he had an impact that you can see?
It's a timely question because actually tonight we got the first indication. There is a new report tonight from the Associated Press that General Kelly has assured Attorney General Jeff Sessions that his job is safe. You may remember Sessions had been under fire from the president himself, and there was speculation, rampant speculation, speculation that he may be fired soon. But Kelly's intervention may mean two things are happening. Number one, that Kelly is settling into the job and is operating more like a traditional White House chief of staff with the power that goes with that. And two, that one of his goals is to settle things down in the West Wing so cabinet secretaries can go about doing their jobs without the chaos and backstabbing and the flood of leaks nearly every day. If so, that could produce some positive results. Jeff, Lena, back to you.
Yeah.